Hi,
Hi, welcome to
film
another
critters.
Film Critters Processes.
Hello. We're here to talk about
Hi.
two movies.
Two very, very, I guess, independent cinema.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put this right out here right now. If you're listening to this and you want to support independent film as well as local theaters, wherever you are, we are gonna be putting links down below for basically like I found where you can stream either of these films for money, which is a crazy idea.
Incredible concept.
But both these will also have them listed sort of like by like a lot of these times the streaming virtual cinema thing they're doing is just that like there will be a bunch of pages independently for like this one. If you stream it on this one, the profits of it or whatever go towards this theater or this theater.
Yeah.
So we're going to be linking off to kind of like where you can see all those. You can just pick a random one if you don't really care. If there's like specific local theaters to you or to your state that you want to be like, oh, I want to see if they're on the list, you can check to see that. But yeah, just if you wanted to check out either of these films, and I mean, honestly, I think they probably are both worth checking out in their own way. Feel free to do it that way because, you know, independent theaters in general are taking a big hit during all this, but independent theaters especially. So I personally at least have been trying to stream any of the independent films I watch via them rather than just going to fucking Amazon or whatever.
Same. Yeah. Keep a close ear on or a close eye on the sort of homepages and websites of your local indie theaters, because yeah, they have ours I can say have done a really good job of pivoting into kind of quarantine entertainment era. So we want to support them, and we want to see them stick around for when all of this is over, so that we can go and watch some unheard of movies from some crazy corner of the world.
Yeah.
And yeah. So we watched a couple of movies. Wouldn't necessarily describe them as horror, but they do have some pretty they're both kind of like drama films, but they're also very heavy in certain very specific aspects. The first one that we watched was a movie called Miss Juneteenth.
Yeah, a very I don't want to say sweet and wholesome. It's a nice familial film. It's a movie about mother-daughter relationships. It is not full-blown Hereditary, but it does not shy away from the tensions of mother-daughter friendships or relationships.
Yeah, 100%. I kind of described this to Jay, and forgive me if this is kind of an annoying description, but I described it more or less as like Hereditary meets Little Miss Sunshine, because it is obviously like a pageant movie.
They're in Texas. I know that, but I don't remember where in Texas. I remember that because like it's a big part of their history is because they're like, this was the day that like we found out that like, oh, we've been being lied to, and that like we were emancipated like several years earlier.
Yeah. So it circles around, it's like a pageant film. It circles around this kind of local pageant. And it's also, but like, yeah, like Jay said, it's also really hyper granular as far as kind of the specific ways, this specific mother-daughter relationship. And the aspects of it that are Hereditary like is not anything that's necessarily horror, but more kind of the horror of like real fucking life, and growing up poor. It centers around this like pageant winner, this like this woman who kind of won a pageant when she was younger, and is now working at like a bar, and doing all sorts of like really unglamorous work. Like one of the first things we see her do is like clean toilets. There's all sorts of lines later on in the film about how like other winners of this same pageant like went on to make something of themselves, and they went on to become, they're like astrophysicists, or they're like CEOs and shit like that. But we're kind of centering ourselves around this character who is kind of stuck in the machinations of this like local kind of local American poverty level, and that kind of in the same way that it does, like in a way that I felt was depicted very realistically, puts stress on a lot of relationships. Almost every relationship that she has to someone else in this movie is kind of marred by, like, how little fucking money she has, and how much this shit sucks.
Yeah. No, it's I guess I would say, because Hereditary is a lot more about like a very inherited like mental illness and like parent, like mothers and like daughter tensions that kind of stem from like that, or mother and child tensions. Whereas Miss Juneteenth is definitely about inherited like poverty and how that causes strain between like relationships. Because we do also see the main character is Turquoise Jones. We see her relationship with her mother as well, and it very much mirrors her a worse version of her relationship with her daughter, where it's like kind of a refusal to see what she's dealing with and like what she's having to work with and what she wants to be doing, and instead seeing her as like, well, you didn't make the choices that I make, and you should make or be making the choices that I made to get to where I am now. Even though we also see that like the grandmother isn't like doing much better either.
Yeah. God. Yeah, that stuff is also that stuff is all really, really, really resonant and really rough. As much as I don't want to compare it too much to Little Miss Sunshine. It does the kind of Little Miss Sunshine-esque climax of the film where they kind of like buck the tradition and they do something different, or her daughter like does something different and does something kind of like unexpected as her performance, and ostensibly gets like punished for it, but they grow closer together as a family. But I also think that this movie has like a stronger claim to that kind of ending, just because there's so much like really, really good stuff happening with how this kind of, the way tradition is perceived as like safety, and the way that these like really, really just ancient ideals are held up as a way to be like, oh, this is how you do things right, and as long as you do these things, you will never be exposed to the ills of society or whatever. When like the movie also kind of like anecdotally shows like that's not true. Like this shit is like not so much random, but it's just like if you're stuck in poverty, like you're not, there is no genuinely like infallible path out of that. You know what I mean?
It is very like, it's arbitrary, like how or if you can get out.
Yeah, fucking absolutely. And it's very, very tough, very difficult, like thematically, but it's also like, yeah, that's it's fucking true. And there's a lot of there's also it kind of comes to a head in the like grandmother subplot, where like all of these people who kind of like claim to have their shit together like absolutely don't. So it's definitely like one big the pageant in and of itself is like one big sort of like crabs in a bucket style, kind of undercutting each other. And the really funny scene of the woman who Turquoise like beat during the pageant that she attended, really, really, really good. I just love all that shit.
Yeah, no, I think the other thing about that, like the thing you talk about where it's like the people who are putting on these airs of doing better, but we see they're not, is also like definitely like a poor, like lower class thing too, where it's like when you're poor, and like especially when you're like a poor and also marginalized, like along like race or identity lines, you kind of are in a position of like you're looking for someone else you can look down on.
Yeah.
Because you exist in capitalism, and capitalism tells you that like, you gotta be looking down on somebody or you're a loser. And so Turquoise ends up kind of turning into that despite her own things. So it's like you see all these characters who are like, okay, well, maybe I'm not doing the best, but like I'm more stable than her. Like I have a husband, or like I didn't have to work as a stripper once.
Yeah.
And I love that thorough line kind of sewn throughout the film. is like people mistaking or remembering that she was a stripper at some point, and like how very clearly like upsetting that is to her, and that's why she's like pushing her daughter so much towards this, is that she's afraid that if her daughter gets too good at dancing, she's also going to become a stripper.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um and just like how clear that like part of the reason that that past for her is so shameful is specifically because it's something that everyone else judged her for, and specifically because it's like, oh, you were Miss Juneteenth and you threw it away, and it's like, you know, that is herself as well looking down on someone else, which is women who do sex work, women who are strippers. Like that's her looking further down, and so she becomes like afraid of that. It's the film really uses class in a very specific way to examine how even in a small community of people who are all connected and who all have a history together and who all ostensibly support each other, class becomes a hierarchical organizational way of defining like, okay, but who's the losers and who's the winners?
Yeah, big time. God,
Which
yeah.
works perfectly for a film that is built around a pageant.
Yeah, absolutely.
As a side note, this is kind of like a thing that me and I forget who it was. I was talking about this with someone about how we saw like this list of people, or people are like support like black film and black filmmakers, and then the list was like just like Black Panther, Get Out, which is a great film, but it's like it all like super like mainstream stuff.
Yeah,
And I want to just
AAA.
like come right out here and say that when you're giving money to those films, you can be supporting them, and you should, because some of them are really great. Like I think Get Out, I think Jordan Peele's movies are great, and I'd like to see him continue to make more. Studios are taking a massive cut of that. You're
Support black filmmaking. Put money in Blumhouse's pockets.
Yeah, support black filmmaking. Walt Disney's corpse needs another layer of frost on it. But like, so we were talking about it. And I was like, that's like infuriating to me, because there are like actual black, like young black filmmakers who like having that kind of support is good. And Miss Juneteenth is a fantastic example. This is the debut film of Channing Godfrey Peoples, and I'm very excited to see what else she does, because this film was fucking gorgeous to look at.
Yeah, there were incredible like shots in this movie. The poster shot of her in her red dress smoking was just like, ugh. And yeah, I saw I don't know necessarily, like I don't think this is necessarily a common thing, but I was kind of scrolling through Letterboxd reviews where people were like kind of dismissing this as more or less a Lifetime movie, and I do not fucking see that criticism at all. Like this is like this is like a good movie in its own right.
I literally can't think of any reason that is, other than because it's about a single mother.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't have the structure. So like the thing is, like Lifetime movie structures usually involve like the character either overcoming or succumbing to some sort of societal ill and victimhood. And this isn't really about that. This is about a woman's like internal struggle of herself, which is like the fodder. Like that's basically what most indie films are. Is a very much so like about a person's internal struggle and how that translates into their interpersonal struggles. And that's a lot of what Turquoise is dealing with this in this film. You know, her own guilt, her own shame about like her past, about her failures, and the way that is spilling out into the way she interacts with her daughter, the way that interacts with the people in her community, and also the way in which, like, you know, she doesn't recognize that there are opportunities in her life besides just trying to like relitigate like her past.
Yeah. And you kind of see her like, there are so many kind of moments in the movie, especially like with regard to kind of the guy that she's with, and you know, the father of her child. There's like a bunch of tension between her and him, and then there's like this other guy who kind of comes in and is like, "Hey, I have money and you are cute," and she like watching her decision fatigue and like inability to really kind of reckon with that, like the morality of that situation, like watching that evolve and kind of dissolve was like really interesting in and of its own right. Like as you know, as like a microcosm of all of her other sort of like decision fatigue in the movie and trying to figure out like where her self-defining like begins and ends and like how she relates to other people. I thought that it was I really thought that it was like leading to a much more kind of dramatic ending, specifically with like her kid's dad, because they kind of play it like he's gonna pull some shit. Like he gets scared off by the guy and then he's just kind of gone for the rest of the movie. I'm glad that we didn't see him again, to be to be clear.
Yeah.
There is always like that fear of retaliation by like a romantic partner is pretty much just never not going to be like an ever present like source of stress. You know, specifically like for this person in this very particular situation. But some stresses just kind of don't resolve themselves. And usually I kind of have I usually kind of take umbrage with movies that don't like wrap things up like that. But I kind of think it works. I kind of think it works a little bit toward the favor of that kind of subplot as well, to where like he's still out there, and you know maybe he's becoming a better person, maybe he isn't.
I think it worked really well too, because I felt like the introduction of those two characters kind of like have this dynamic to the film of like representing like not like a shoulder angel and shoulder demon, but kind of like two different temptations.
Yeah.
And that both of them sort of offer her like ideas that she had I forget the name. The name of the man that she's working with, who kind of is like, you know, I have money. It's sort of like, oh, like, am I willing to like be in a relationship with a guy who's like nice, but like isn't really like a dude I'm super into? And am I like comfortable like lying to him about the fact that I'm not into him?
Yeah.
For the safety of like security that like me and my daughter desperately need. Am I comfortable with continuing to engage with this person who like fulfills me emotionally, but is like incredibly unreliable and like consequently is like making my situation with me and my daughter like harder? Like I really like it because like it really shows like this tension she's in, where it's like it's not the sort of typical romance thing of like, oh, either the heartless billionaire or like the rugged secretly rich handsome fireman.
Yeah.
It's like, no, both of these guys like aren't really going to provide like what she needs in her life, but she's feeling torn, like she has to make a decision about picking one of them, because like that's what you're supposed to do in your life, is you have to pick the partner, and that's going to be the person who helps you fix your life and put it together. And so I kind of like that, like that doesn't get resolved in like a more conclusive way, because I feel like a part of it is her sort of realizing like, oh, I can invest down in like my daughter and myself. Like I can make my romantic decisions based on like what is overall best for us, not based on like what is strategically best for us.
Yeah. Which is awesome. Just like a really good touch for her to basically pick like neither like neither guy.
And to do so without it turning into like a big speech where she's like, I learned something today, guys. It's just you just notice like, yeah, she kind of is very clearly unsure of how to follow through with these relationships, and then seeing the conflict between them is like what makes her realize like, oh, I don't like need to date either of these guys. I don't need to rely on either of these people.
Yeah, which kind of goes back to the sort of like paranoia about the like unknown or like the abject or whatever, that like the whole like pageant is trying to kind of position itself against, right? Like, you know, because like, you know, morals notwithstanding, everyone is kind of just doing what they need to do to survive. And you know, the sort of you know, outside opinions and the sort of kind of play acting as a family is sometimes, you know, sometimes kind of does a little bit more harm than good. More or less, I you know, or at least specifically in the case of this movie, this plot, this proceeding of events.
As a note, the scenes of the pageant, I love how they're just subtly hyper real. Like anytime we're seeing them do rehearsals, anytime like we see the competition, it like feels like a dream sequence, but it's like actually happening. And I feel like
Yeah.
they're filmed in the same way as like her actual memories and like kind of dream sequence moments she has. Like it's filmed in this way to make it feel like it's just slightly unreal, which I thought was like a really good touch to like how, because it really underscores like how much this event is like such a big deal in their community to the point that it takes on a like actual fantastical character.
Yeah. Yeah. I loved all the design decisions and like all of the kind of subtle character acting of everything that kind of went into everything that kind of like went into the pageant scenes. Man, yeah, really, 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 really dense, and definitely a lot to be said about kind of like the aesthetic choices therein.
I will say I feel so dumb that I just realized the metaphorical parallel is that a big thing they emphasize over and over is that the Miss Juneteenth thing is about like an event that happened in their Texas community where it was like 2 years after the emancipation, the black community there found out that the emancipation had happened, like it had been kept a secret from them. And so like the theme of that is that it's a celebration of the day that we realized that we were actually free to make choices for ourselves. And that
Damn.
is what Turquoise is struggling with.
But you were free the whole time. Think about it. That's fucking cool, actually. That's like
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah, I like just put that together. I was like, oh, wait a second. Like the whole thing of Juneteenth is like, it parallels like her realizations that like she has larger autonomy for her life than she is, which is like I would say is like maybe like the minorest critique I could give to the film is, you know, the happy ending is like now you're a small business owner, and it's like maybe it's just because I live in coronavirus times. I don't know if that's like the best happy ending.
Yeah,
But it's like
I don't know.
I get it because we are shown that what the character values is economic security, and the American dream of economic security is owning a small business. So it makes sense. I can hush my cynical socialist voice for a bit to recognize that this is a film about accomplishing economic independence for a person who has gone her whole life without it.
This was definitely kind of like a immediately pre-COVID film.
Yeah, every time they have those pageants, I was like, you can't do that. You can't have that's too many people.
That's too many damn people in the room. Please. Oh my god, you guys are not distancing at all. Where were the masks?
Where were the masks? I'm saying that every day of my life. Turquoise, you feel me on this. Where are the masks?
Where? Oh god.
Also, I will say her daughter, so I was like blown away at seeing an extremely wholesome portrayal of a teenage girl that was like not like unrealistic.
Yeah, no, that was incredible.
Like she's just like, but I want to dance. I don't want to do this thing. Mom, I just want to spend time with my boyfriend and like maybe smoke weed, but like not in a like kid on the edge way, just in a like because I'm a teenager and it's like 2019. And like weed is legal in like half the country now. Like it was very like actually like kind of a relief to see like this kind of a film that even addresses like parent teen dynamics and has a teen who's like I'm looking at the Sundance description and they call her rebellious, and I'm like, she's not like rebellious. She's just like trying to assert that like she is 15 years old now. Like she is not a child. She can make some decisions for herself. Like I don't know. It's nice to see teenagers actually be depicted as like teenagers without it having to be specifically teenagers like on the edge or teenagers dealing with trauma. It's just no, she's just she's a little naive to the world because she's like kind of coming into young adulthood, but she's
Right.
aware that like, you know, she's old enough to make some decisions for herself.
Yeah, I thought her portrayal was like spectacular because she's not like she's not this very sort of typical teen character with that just like, oh, I hate you, mom. I'm so I'm so fucking.
I didn't even want to be at the pageant. Like it's nothing like that. It's just like you could just tell from the way she's acting that she's like, I don't really want to be in the pageant, but like I get that this is important to you, so I'm going along with it. But like I don't want to do this.
Well, I mean, like we all have memories of like being 15 and like having enough, having just enough like self-realization or self-consciousness to like be going through something and being like, wait, why am I here? Like who am I here for? Because like not fucking me. But like she's not angsty in the movie. She's just like she just wants to do things. She just wants to do shit. But she clearly like loves her mom. Even if there's just like a bunch of tension just because of other factors. But yeah, like a lot of really good like heartfelt scenes of them kind of like fighting and making up and bonding, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, it's really it was really cute seeing her at the end with her mom during the during her like getting the business loan stuff, because it kind of makes it like she's aware that this is like, oh, this is the thing that is good for my mom.
Yeah, really fucking good movie.
I highly recommend it. Well, okay, actually, I don't want to be like, I highly recommend it. It is like it's kind of in the same vein of Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always, where it's like if you want just like a very simple, straightforward like character drama, like this is perfect for that. But if that's not really your bag, like I know this is the kind of movie I probably wouldn't put on unless it was someone I knew who was also into these kind of movies, because like otherwise they would just be like, nothing's happening. It's boring. It's boring. Why are they talking so much?
When do the guns and action scenes?
No, not to say like you're a fucking idiot if you don't like this. It's just more, it's like, no, I am aware that like this is, there are times even now still as an adult where I'm just like, I don't want to watch a movie about people talking about their feelings.
It's a vibe. It's very specific.
But if that's a thing you like I said, very straightforward. It's a very very well executed one, and I was a fan.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it and came away from it being very satisfied. I would rather have spent my money on maybe some clothes from like some clothes or some jewelry from Goodwill. I was gonna say like a prop tiara, but like when the fuck would I ever use that except for, I don't know, for the occasional obnoxious selfie or whatever.
I think I would rather have spent it on, honestly, this movie really made me miss like fairs and like stupid bullshit like that, or like when like little communities will have like, oh, like this church is putting on like a big thing and there's a bunch of food and you can pay money and it's all going towards some cause. I like $12 for like one of those things. Like you get a little plate of like 7 different homemade meals, and then there's like just like weird cookies that you've never heard of, like something like that. I absolutely would have like killed for that.
Yeah.
But I'm glad I didn't spend my $12 on Black Panther ever, because that movie was gonna just go immediately into Walt Disney's pocket.
Yeah, sorry folks. We're not big fans of the MCU, even if they, do hire.
We're not big fans of the MCU, even if it did take them like 20 movies to hire literally a person who wasn't white. Like the most like basic criteria for diversity is just like someone who isn't white.
The Disney Corporation is so woke. But I would not have spent my $12 on a pageant of any kind. They're the fucking worst. Fuck pageants.
Oh God, they're so boring. Have you ever watched pageants like on YouTube?
Never, because I'm not a pervert.
It's okay, fair.
But no,
there's literally no way I could follow up on that. That's not going to make me sound like a pervert. So all right, fine. Let's just move on then.
I'm not into. I'm not saying, there's a certain level of. I think that pageants warrant like a certain level of like, why does this exist type of like voyeurism. And
it's a very outdated voyeurism now that we have influencers too.
what's our next movie, Jay?
Our next movie is I think it's actually another debut film, Tito by Grace Glowicki.
Tito.
As I teased earlier, Tito is a fucking wild movie. And much like the one we discussed on the last processes, is also fairly short, an hour and 10 minutes. Hey, movies, stop making yourselves longer than that if you don't have anything else to say.
Yeah, real shit. What an incredible work Tito is. I expected to be very annoyed by Tito, and I'm not gonna say that I wasn't, but I ended up like I'm on the movie's side, or rather, like I just really fucking enjoyed it.
Yeah,
it is a crazy movie that I don't think a single like it's told in a very specific way where like I don't think they have a genuine like real conversation about anything, the two characters that this movie is about.
Yeah, no, Tito barely talks. Tito has like a handful of sentences that they exchange with anybody.
Yeah. So like, you know, it's a very simple, it's like a really simple sort of political cartoon of a movie. But it's also like weirdly effective. I don't know how you felt about it, but
I think the physicality of both people's performances to match the like absurdity of the constructed world that they made is like perfect, especially because like the whole film has this energy of like really like 90s punk slapdash movies where it's like there's like no cast and there's like basically no other characters except like the two main cast members, and you barely see anybody else, and like off-screen threats are portrayed as like noise and like single hands and like things pounding on windows, like very very like minimal kind of like film in that way. And so what ends up taking over the film and driving it is like the acting and the emotionality that is brought to it, and they act the fuck out of this movie. These are like Jim Carrey level like physical acting performances, but like played for horror comedy-ish rather than comedy.
Right.
Slapstick horror is like kind of like, yeah, it's like the best, like slapstick drama is the best way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, to start right off the bat, so the main character Tito is actually the director, whose name Jay just said and has slipped my mind.
Grace Glowicki.
Grace Glowicki, who is basically in drag, playing the main character Tito.
Yeah, she's doing like a drag king, like Keanu Reeves, like early Keanu Reeves, like 90s teen heartthrob Keanu Reeves, basically.
Right. Yeah. And the character is kind of portrayed as having like some sort of like autism, some sort of disorder, almost to the point of, like there's like some hints of like schizophrenia, and just kind of like hearing things that aren't there, seeing things that aren't there, and really really scared of the outside world. And so the character like is basically barely functional and kind of like starving themselves and you know, like suffering a lot, and then all of a sudden their neighbor just kind of comes into their life, like this very annoying shitty stoner guy just kind of shows up and like cooks him a meal and is nice to him, and then almost immediately starts taking advantage of him, and like, you know, and like yelling at him and just being really unchill and shitty and weird, which like felt I didn't want to say it felt familiar, but it definitely felt like the sort of emotional palette of like getting into a certain type of relationship with another person. It paints like a really evocative portrait of like a very specific dynamic.
The physicality, I actually want to touch on that. So this is actually like a multi-part thing related on the stuff you talked about. So the thing you said at the beginning where you're like, oh, I kind of expected to be annoyed by this film. And then we found out that it was like, oh, the director is doing drag. I think it's because the trailer kind of deceptively suggests, but it also kind of is like, it feels like one of those movies that like a dude would make that's very like, oh man, like what if the world was just like fucked up, you know? Because like the world
Yeah.
is fucked up, and like what if that was like you just had to like you were like a dude who couldn't talk right, and you had to like use a whistle to like get out of trouble, like that'd be, and then like a dude comes into your house, like wouldn't that be wild? And the problem is that Grace Glowicki, this is a great film. I'm gonna watch one of her short films actually after this because I am interested. Great director. She is the girl version of that. Her Kickstarter for this film is so fucking annoying.
Oh my god.
it's the thing is, it didn't make me like dislike the film. It actually made me like the film more because it gave me more of an insight into like why certain choices were made. But it is very much like so the film is essentially about like rape culture, and like she was like, hold on, let me read the quote from it. My aspiration with Tito is that it encourages empathy across gender lines for the fear foisted upon female bodies by sexual predation. By supporting this film, you are supporting a project that is encouraging positive change and viewers' attitudes and assumptions surrounding sexual predation and promoting empathy and validation for an all too common female experience. Random words are just bolded in that.
Oh, okay. You know,
So and then in explaining why she's doing cross-gender, so I decided to use cross-gender acting, i.e. to reappropriate the experience of women as prey as the male creation and male problem that it is. And then she like makes a note that like Tito is not a trans man. Like Tito is me playing a cis man. Please do not read this character as an attempt at portraying like trans masculinity. That's not what this film is about.
right.
It's very,
Which, to be fair, I didn't get those vibes at all. I did think it was like a classical stage kind of like drag performance of a cis character.
yeah, same. Like, to be clear, that is definitely not her. That part doesn't read as her covering her ass. That part reads as her like clarifying for in case it comes up. But she definitely is playing the character as just a fucked up cis man. So it's like this reading is like, wow, this sounds like it would be such an annoying film. But the way that ends up coming across in the film to me is that the way she sort of translates that is like is not to deny, that like men don't face that, because she does acknowledge that in her write up here as well. But to sort of like, well, what kind of predation do like a lot of men like experience? And it's, extremely codependent, abusive, like male friends who basically bully them because they are more willing to scream at them and like prey on their anxieties.
Yeah.
And this movie fucking to a T captures what that is, but specifically like what it feels like.
Yeah.
And that is where it's like the stuff that she's performing where it comes off as like some sort of neuroatypicalness is an attempt from reading over her like interviews and stuff to kind of bring for her. She's like she says it comes from a period in her time where she was just super paranoid. And she was like constantly paranoid about being like basically preyed on by men. And so she wanted to bring that to the character. And she says like to her, what it made it feel like she was like bending herself in and like trying to like make herself as like small as possible, which is why Tito is like has a hunch and is like constantly like shrinking down and like shaking, is that she's trying to bring a physicality to that anxiety. I think the fact that it reads as like neurotypical like definitely works with the dynamics that the film is exploring. But it did give me like a bit more pause of like, I mean, but at the same time, like it does at times read a little mocking of those kind of mannerisms.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that's your mileage may vary thing. I have very, very limited history with being like visually or like physically perceived as like neurological. I had like neurological shit when I was a kid, but so I was kind of able to recognize and identify with that. But I'm not a person who like, has issues like dealing with like physical symptoms of autism. I'm not a person who has issues with becoming nonverbal or not making eye contact. I can't speak to how much this portrayal captures that experience correctly. So I would warn if someone's going into it that maybe watch like the trailer online and kind of figure out if you feel like the film is going to maybe come off as a little too mocking. I want to say it didn't, but I don't have the experiences to say for sure if it didn't.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, I don't know. That's interesting because I kind of got, I guess I got like a very different read on the movie.
Oh, really? Like what read did you get?
Well, for one thing, it didn't really seem so much to be well the movie itself doesn't like center like the presence of women, which is probably, on purpose. It seemed more to be like about the concept of codependency and like that like specific type of friendship, more than anything else. But I will say that like I'm kind of understanding what she says, specifically with regard to like the nightmare scene of them like looking at like 3D CG animated porn together.
Oh my god, the most like if you've ever gone onto like a I guess normal person porn website, the like click here to fuck 2B from Near Automata. Like it's that. It's like literally that shit. Just like horribly rendered giant dicks and like SFM models like grinding against them.
Yeah, like that shit is genuinely profane and disgusting. So like I do understand not to porn shame anybody.
I will.
But like who really does need the like endless like gifs of video game characters getting tit fucked in impossible positions? More to the point, like I do also kind of in retrospect recognize like where the movie is kind of like drawing a line between like that content and just like the sort of commodification of pussy in air quotes, which by the way, funniest scene in any movie ever is when the actor for his neighbor is just like talking about pussy and going out to get pussy, and he just gets more and more like just completely insane, and
he gets like angry at the concept of pussy. It is incredible scene. The character's name is literally just like the friendly neighbor. The actor I know is like a friend of Grace's. Ben Petrie is the actor's name. Incredible match of like two Titos like kind of cringing like internal like acting. Ben is all external acting and it's so good.
Yeah, really really big contrast between them, which was very effective, especially with the just absurd pelvic thrusting and
that was incredible. That man was like that. He looked like he was popping his like hips in and out of place. Like he, that man fucks like he's trying to stop a sinking ship.
God, it is in a lot of senses a kind of annoying movie in those regards, and I hate to kind of besmirch it as such, but
I mean, we talked about this before. It doesn't help that, not to put poor Ben on blast, he kind of looks like early in this film. And he kind of acts like an early sketch in this film.
Yeah. Just the very, very, very specific, like, grooming someone to find your, like, screaming idiosyncrasies, like, acceptable, an acceptable way for a human being to act.
Yeah, just like, and I think that's like a big theme in the film that kind of ends up really working, where it's like, reading their thesis and then being like, okay, I kind of see how that leads to what we see. Cause like a lot of what I got out is like, is like intermale, non-sexual, but kind of weirdly sexual, like platonic though, like grooming, where it's like, oh, you're a loser. Well, I'm good at tricking you into thinking that I'm not a loser, but I'm meeting you at the place that you're at. But it's really just so that I can like exploit you because I'm like just a more charismatic loser.
That's the thing about the movie that gets me, is that it's like we've all met this fucking guy. Like, we all know this fucking guy. It's basically like the newest like form of just insane misogynist who gives you a mental illness, is just like this kind of like mousy stoner dude who is just like kind of loud and charismatic as a way to cover for something.
Yeah, the nerd hippie, where it's like they initially come off as like super like, oh man, no, I like love cooking, and like, dude, we're like vibing like so much, man. Like we should do drugs together sometime. Like it's such a type, and the type looks such like this dude that while I was watching it, I took a screenshot, sent it to Brew, and said that it looked like a person that we have both encountered. And Brew went, oh my God, wait till you see what happens next. because he is that type of person.
Oh yeah, absolutely fucking big time.
Like,
and it's like,
if you look at this guy and like think about like any of the stuff we've said, you'll look at this guy and you'll be like, oh, I've met this dude. Like, you might not have gotten friends with him, but like you've seen him at a party. He was smoking weed as well, and he was at some point claiming to be vibing with someone who has exchanged like 4 sentences with him.
Yeah, 100%. Just like, you know, as much as this is a movie against the sexual exploitation of women, which I think is definitely a really present aspect, I also just think it's kind of talking about like social tribalism and how everybody is like really kind of you know, not to bring up something that I talk about way too much, but just like the sort of American isolation, not even political isolationism, but just like literally like fucking everyone's just a fucking loser, and there's this kind of like social panopticon that's puts that just like shoves you into like a kind of caste, and or not even really like a firm, like, you know, what I'm talking about here is like things that are completely inside of your head, because no one is like the social sort of like determination of anybody's like social worth is like false. It is like a completely bullshit concept. But like kind of the origin of loserdom is people buying into it in specifically the ways and in the specific behaviors of like how you know, how these two characters kind of play into it.
It really kind of like to like the sort of that digital panopticon where it's like everybody is made into a loser who has to go into their tribe of losers, and then those losers compete to see who can be the top loser.
Right.
Very ties into a political theory book I read recently called, it's very short, Psychopolitics. If you can probably find an easily pirated version online. But one of the things it talks about is how neoliberalism has kind of moved away from the biopolitics of Foucault to the psychopolitics, where one of the things it tricks people into is just constant self-improvement.
Right.
For the purposes of being better at capitalism, not for the purposes of things you enjoy doing, but like constant like self-monitoring and checking yourself and like, am I being a loser, basically? And like that's what this movie is because like, you know, friendly neighbor doesn't show up to help Tito like be happier in his skin and feel less afraid of people around him. He shows up to make him feel more validated and thus be like, oh, you need to do oh, you haven't had sex? I need to show you how to have sex. Oh, you haven't looked at bad porn? I'm going to show you disgusting porn. Oh, you haven't smoked weed? Dude, I'm going to force this joint in your mouth because you need to smoke weed.
Oh God, that scene was horrible.
Yeah, it's so good, and it's like it's really cool how like the more we've been watching films, the more I like can make connections, because like you can even connect this to like the Film and No GF documentary we talked about, where it's like this Tito is the kind of person who gets exploited in the ways that they show in that movie, basically.
Yeah. Um, not to be this fucking kind of person, but like I did read a lot about the Columbine shooters because I was that kind of high schooler. And I mean, like I also was like really, I think anybody like that was a really weird time in history because like uh, basically the reverberations of Columbine, not to bring up fucking Columbine while we're trying to talk about a fucking movie.
No, that's
but
fine. I mean, it's relevant.
Yeah, like the reverberations of that like affected everybody who was going to school in the United States to where like I would just be like drawing something like when I was like way too young to even think about like guns or the concept of guns or the idea even of bringing a gun to school. I would have shit ripped out of my hands and be like, you're violent. And I'd be like, oh, okay. This movie portrays ostensibly the type of dynamic that like Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold had with each other, where like one of them was ostensibly like a depressed person, like like a very lost and quite literally like mentally ill individual. They were both mentally ill generally. But like one of them was definitely like the instigating party and who like groomed the other and kind of like brought him along for all of this like violence. And that's something that we see kind of play out in kind of a psychosocial sense among men and among people in general, kind of all over the place. But it's played out in a very large scale in the big, huge quotes here dating scene. Which, as we see in this movie, they're not really, they're obviously not trying to date.
Yeah.
They're just trying to consume a commodity, vis-a-vis getting pussy, which is, its own kind of social, and moral ill.
The weird like lie that they come up with. Just like, oh yeah, we're gonna say we're in a band, and then the lie comes up with to explain Tito is like Tito's he shreds when he's on stage, but he's gotta reserve his strength for that, so that's why he's very clearly extremely uncomfortable and avoiding eye contact. I like that even in that scene you don't actually see the women.
Yeah.
There are no women in this film to the extent that even when like the characters are talking to women, we don't see or hear them. We just can tell from his facial expression that they don't believe him and that they are walking away from him because he is gross.
Yeah, and I think I just think that's like, I mean, like it's a really fun touch. It's like it helps the movie with. The movie kind of feels a little bit like a one act, and if anybody knows me, that's my type of shit. That's
the one and done act. We don't need any more acts.
Yeah, for real. And I almost wish there were more movies that were kind of like that. But yeah, like it didn't really try to concern itself too much with with trying to be fucking believable or. Like it was stylistic, I would say, in every regard. There were parts where so weirdly, we talked about another movie, that was like, there's a lot of movies coming out that kind of feel in response to other movies. And a weird thing that I picked up on was that I kind of feel like this movie was a response to Under the Skin.
Oh,
a lot of similar imagery, a lot of similar like weird use of like lighting, and like a very also just a very kind of psychosexual like delving into one specific individual character. The thing about Under the Skin is that it kind of positions women as the or I don't know. I don't know if it implicitly does that or what, but it plays with like these images of a woman kind of instigating sexualized contact with these unwitting males when like I've been like I've been living as a woman for some years at this point, and I also am like a functioning member of society who is able to see and hear things. So I know that is not necessarily that is like a fantasy, that, you know, men are routinely kind of like the instigators of attention and harassment and blah 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 blah. Like, and that's not to say women are like morally pure or should be or anything like that, but it's just like
it's just yeah, like the way social shit plays out is like women. When you hear about cases of women initiating and like sexually harassing in that way, it's usually with a power dynamic on top of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this movie kind of feels like a reaction and a response to say like, well, you know, maybe we wouldn't be in this fucking position as a society if bodies weren't a commodity, you know?
Yeah, I know. Sort of recentering it back on the idea of like the creating a male character who exhibits the same paranoia that she felt because of the commodification of bodies by creating a male character whose body and just like entire physicality is commodified and left vulnerable to less obvious commodification by extension because of it. Yeah,
absolutely. And like, you know, we also have this character who at the start of the movie is just like kind of and I think that's it's kind of interesting and important that he like at the beginning of the movie he's like this meat who is like unable to feed himself, and you hear just a constant soundtrack of like you know, stomach growling and shit like that. So I think his presence in his own body in that particular case kind of sets up a very specific sort of mental like headspace for him to be in when he's eventually, you know, kind of dragged along, and it kind of provides like a story reason as to why he's like a lot more hesitant to kind of go out and, you know, get pussy.
Yeah.
So you know, that stuff was interesting, and I thought the sort of themes at play there were really strong.
The scene where he pukes up like an entire box of Fruity Loops was very gnarly, though.
That was disgusting. Horrible.
That was like the moment I was like, oh, this movie is all about outsized everything, where it's like, oh, I'm not just gonna have him puke. I'm gonna have him puke, and then the way puke, like the way you see puke when you're like on your knees with your tears in your eyes, where it just feels like there's so much of it.
Yeah,
and so there's going to actually literally
puke.
Be so much of it.
Yeah.
This motherfucker out here eating 2 boxes of cereal and then puking.
Oh my god.
No wonder your tum-tum hurt.
No wonder you got the tummy grumbly.
Oh, my stomach hurt. Oh,
my stomach.
It's definitely another in the long line of films that understands that absurdity and terror can be very, very closely linked and how to use that effectively.
Yeah, for sure.
Just as a maybe like a final little note before I forget. So for the Kickstarter, all the tiers have like stupid little names. Like the smallest tier is Tito is blushing. The second is Tito is grateful. Tito is beaming. Tito is pumped. Tito's jaw dropped. Tito is pinching himself. Tito is freaking out. That tier, by the way, includes a Tito fidget spinner.
I want a Tito's fidget spinner.
Tito is. I'm gonna look up what the Tito fidget spinners look like.
Oh
Tito
my
is
God.
Weeping with glee. Tito is quaking with joy. Tito is doing cartwheels. Tito is gonna burst, and then Tito is in heaven, and then finally Tito loves you.
Oh my God! I love the construction of Tito as like this person's like OC.
Yeah, no, it's very cute. I have not found photos of Tito's fidget spinner.
If you got a Tito fidget spinner, please send us a photo.
Please send us a photo. Please sell it to us if you're not going to keep it.
I want a Tito fidget spinner.
I need more than anything a Tito fidget spinner.
Please, God.
Please, I want to email Grace Gowicki and like, do you have any more Tito fidget spinners? I will do an unboxing review of the Grace Glowicki official Tito fidget spinner.
Yeah, I will sing the movie's praises to the high heavens if I receive a specialty Tito fidget spinner.
I do remember while we were watching it, when they got to the weird CGI porn thing, I was like, is that 2B's ass? And I looked, and it is. And I'm very upset that I was able to recognize Nier Automata's 2B from her ass.
You fucking weeb. You fucking... What are you, some kind of fucking porn looker?
I was like, I know those gloves. I did not recognize what the other character was, though, that they actually show the face of. Maybe it was like an OC. Yeah, I am curious if they sourced those from anywhere, or if they like just had someone make them, because they're very on point for like what that kind of porn looks like.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like it definitely looked like it. I didn't spot 2B, and I didn't really recognize any of the other characters. There was like some like very kind of boilerplate blonde woman, and yeah, I don't fucking know. Insane thing to include in the movie, and even more insane if they had, like commissioned works for that scene.
I love the idea of them having commissioned work.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, a final thing, kind of tying back to the thing I said before of like, it's a bit hard for me to judge. I when I was reading up on it, I found out that Tito's whole thing where he's like constantly bending over is supposed to be that he has a hunch. Do not like that decision. I think it's fine that he could. I think he could have just been hunched over because of anxiety. I think the implication is supposed to be that he formed a hunch because of his like anxiety and like his behavior. But it does feel weird to give a character like implied physical disformity as part of their like character flaw.
Yeah, I don't love that. See that stuff that's kind of the pitfall of I don't know, like a certain type of magical realist filmmaking that I struggle with sometimes, because like you have to accept at some point that you're to a certain degree just as poisoned as like the societal ills that you're trying to point out, or like poisoned in a very, very different way, just because like I guess you could make a point about the relationship between deformity and kind of incelness or whatever. But I don't think that's a very... I just don't think it's as interesting from someone who isn't, like, from the inside of that.
Yeah,
dynamic.
Somebody who, having seen photos of, looks like a normal, happy white woman.
Yeah, exactly.
And as such, maybe should not play a character of a physical disfigurement who is a pathetic loser. Like I said,
we're
it's
canceling
like,
you, Grace.
Like I said, it's just like a weird thing that like is barely even in the text of the film, because it just comes off like her character is like constantly like cringing down, but is apparently supposed to be that the character has like a hunch in their spine.
That's lame. It's just, I mean, like, yeah. To be clear,
like I said before, it's a great film and it gave me interesting insight into it. But it's like also like the director does kind of say some annoying things in interviews that are like, all right, come on, like,
yeah,
you don't need it. This isn't your like film thesis. This is a movie. You can let it talk for itself.
yeah, absolutely.
What would you have rather spent your $12 on?
I would rather have spent my $12 on. I mean, the food in the movie looked pretty fucking good. I do. Right? I would want to get like a platter from a diner.
Oh, that was like some. Yeah, no, that was like some like. What's that fucking dude's name? Miyazaki ass food.
Yeah. And maybe it was just kind of after, like, being framed after, like, a scene of someone vomiting up, like, 2 gallons of fucking Cap'n Crunch or whatever. But it did make me hungies.
I am sending you an image that I do want to make sure is put in this video of Grace Gowicki at some sort of, like, TIFF Film Festival thing wearing a hat that just says movies.
Oh my god! Hold on.
I came across that while I was looking stuff up, and I was just like, this needs to be in our video. I love this photo so much.
This is genuinely iconic. This is a fucking look. Hell fucking
I
yeah.
like movies.
Movies.
That picture is Film Critter.
That's our brand. I love, wow, that's an incredible image. I love that hat. Incredible. What would you rather have?
You're uncanceled.
We're uncanceling you officially. Thank you for wearing your silly little hat. I loved it.
You know what? That's what I wish I would have spent my $12 on. I want that hat. I want this movie's hat.
This is just making us like I want the Tito fidget spinner. I want the movies hat. Grace, please start a fashion line.
Yeah, no, actually, yeah, I would have spent my $12 on the Tito fidget spinner and or movies hat. I'm glad I didn't spend my $12 on a gas station fidget spinner or like the cover for like a really whack club where that dude like or like the entry door fee where like I get cornered by sorry, I mean the guy from this movie. The neighbor.
Yeah. I mean that guy exists in every club. He's just wearing different clothes.
Yeah,
you know,
he is everywhere in Seattle. Thankfully, he does dress like that in Seattle, so it's pretty easy to spot him. Maybe a few more of those, like maybe a bit more patchouli oil and those like scarves, like that. Yeah. You know, like the kind of scarf I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do. Oh, I do. I would not rather have spent $12 on source filmmaker porn. Because you know what the fuck is that?
And that's just they just do it. It's also like, why spend money on that when I can guarantee you the same quality is being made like for free? Like,
why spend money on it when you can't fucking escape it?
Yeah, exactly. I would spend money to make it go away. There are like hundreds of gigs of it being spent every day. Like Google is probably currently trying to research ways to like keep it from being produced because it's just eating up data in servers.
Yeah, some sort of Google MK Ultra campaign to make everyone stop being horny.
Source filmmaker porn is like literally so ubiquitous that like in whatever cultural fallout will happen, like archaeologists, statistically, something that will be preserved will be just like Mercy from Overwatch getting just like fucked apart.
I think that's the legacy that humanity deserves. I think we've dug our own grave there.
That and Tito fidget spinners, all that's going to be left.
Well, great. Yeah, so yeah, we enjoyed talking about these movies. These are both wonderful. We have another 3 free episode that's probably already out. I think that one's coming out before this one. But keep an eye out for that. We've got Film Critters Throws It Back, our $5 and up patron exclusive show where we talk about older films. Jay, why don't you tell them what we're going to be talking about for August? We are going to be talking
about we're talking about conspiracy theory films, and the winning vote was Jacob's Ladder, which I foolishly promised to do the original and the really bad remake. So we're going to be talking about both of those, and we're going to talk about how conspiracies have changed in the past 20 years.
Yeah.
By the way, if you didn't know that there was a remake of Jacob's Ladder, there was, and I've already seen it, and it fucking sucks. And if you want to hear more, you can come join our Patreon. We got a lot of fun little videos like that.
Yeah.
We got a Forrest Gump video that got both our Twitters DMCA'd.
Yeah. We also have last month's patron exclusive Throws It Back episode was about propaganda. And we talked about Zootopia and Dark Knight Rises, and that was a lot of fun. So yeah, if you join, you get access to the freaking backlog back there. You get to hear us talk about all sorts of crazy stuff. And we've got more stuff in the pipeline. We're watching movies all the time here in quarantine.
Yeah, there really is just not much else to do.
Fuck it, right?
In addition to Patreon, don't forget, if any of these movies sounded like something you'd want to see and you haven't seen them already, in the description. We're gonna have links to places you can go to see if there's any local theaters near you, or just pick a random one. Just support independent theater, bitch.
Bitch, fucking do it. Don't ask questions. Support the arts. Pussy. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Baru.
My name is Jay Bearhat.
Bye. Bye.